Hey Mama, welcome to the Growing Through Motherhood podcast, where we grow through the struggles, joys, and beautiful messes of life together. I'm Kelsey Shalane, wife, homeschooling mama of 4, creator of the Confidence to Homeschool podcast, and most of all, a lover of Jesus and coffee. Motherhood is a wild, beautiful journey that stretches, challenges, and calls us to pivot at a moment's notice. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. When we surrender it all to God, He brings growth and purpose in every single step. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's grow together. Hey friend, real quick before we get started in this episode, if you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you're following it so that way you get alerted every time I give you a new episode. Share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really helps this podcast to grow and to get into more homes. So now let's go into the podcast. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Growing Through Motherhood podcast. If you feel like a full-time referee in your house, you're constantly breaking up fights and hearing "Mom" all day long, this episode is for you. Growing up as an only child, I had no idea how much fighting happened with multiple kids, and it was nonstop. I was like losing my mind with it, and I realized I don't want to raise kids who need me to solve every problem for them. I want to raise kids who know how to solve their own problems for themselves. So if you are home all day with the kids and you feel like you break up fights every 5 minutes, I see you, and let's grow through this. I grew up as an only child. I did not grow up dealing with sibling conflict, but I think that instead of that being a disadvantage, I'm going to use it as an advantage in this point. Like, I can remember my mom saying all the time, I hated that everything was my fault all the time. My sister didn't have an idea of her own. Like, I was always the one in trouble because I taught that to her, which is really funny because now she sees my kids and she's like, oh, I see how that was actually true. So I come from this at a whole different clear lens. Like, I don't have any of the baggage, any of the thought processes that come with raising kids as siblings. And so I'm going to go with the fact that that's a set of fresh eyes. So I was dealing with all of these fights and all of these things, and I'm like, I don't understand. Why do you just like walk by and pick on your brother? I don't get it. Why do you just walk by and, get at your sister? I don't understand. So I did what I do best. I go back to the thought process of what do I want in the end? Like, what kind of adults do I want these children to be? Because that is one of my very favorite questions to ask. Like, if I am parenting out of a perspective of the end in mind, I want kids who are going to communicate. I want kids that are going to compromise. I want kids that are going to take responsibility for their actions. Those things are super important to me. It says in Luke 16:10, whoever is faithful in little, if they can be faithful in the small conflicts, then they can also handle the big ones better. If that's with a friend or with a, family member, then by all means. But they have to learn in those little bitty conflicts how to get along with each other. And then it also says Proverbs 22:6, train them up in the way that they should go. That doesn't mean that we get to control every outcome. That means we are training them to become the people that we want them to be, the adults that we want them to be. So what was my first answer is I started giving them the opportunity to figure this out amongst themselves. When they were continuing to fight and they were, wanting one of them wanted to play the Xbox and the other one wants to play the Xbox and it's not fair and blah, blah, blah. I had started putting things in their own hands. Like, I really just started handing over a little bit of control to them and looking at them. And I think that this started with me getting like on their level, looking in their eyes and saying, I want you guys to figure this out amongst yourself. If you need to set a time period, if you guys need to rock, paper, scissors, if you guys need to, like, whatever it is that you need amongst yourselves in order to be able to figure this out for yourselves, I want you to do that. So one of the ways that this has looked recently is Asher wanted to play the Xbox. Well, he'd already been playing for 15 minutes. Addison then wanted to come in and she wanted to play the Xbox. And Asher was wanting 30 minutes. And she goes, okay, well, if you want 30 minutes, that's fine. But that means I get to play for 45 minutes because you've already been playing for 15. And he did not like that. Well, when Addison started her negotiation, she started at 20 minutes because she knew 45 minutes is a long time. And she knew she was going to add on those 15 minutes. And so she was like, well, we can go back to 20. And so they did. They went back to 20. He was better with 35 minutes for her than he was with 45 minutes for her. But that was all between them. The only part that I had to step in on was the fact that he was like, I have not already been playing for 15. And I was like, honey, you don't have a great concept of time yet. And you have been probably playing for about 15 minutes. And guess what? Addison is going to play, and then she's probably going to go do something else, where you're going to want to sit there and play all day if I would let you. So it's fair. So that took so much mental energy off of me of having to sit there and be the referee and start the negotiations for myself. You can train them in negotiations. That is a great life skill. That is not just a skill for your home. That is a great life skill. So just start relinquishing a little bit of control and allowing them to pick up control, because for some reason with kids, if they are allowed to control the things that they can control and the things that we can put them in life, give them in life, it gives them more freedom, and they move generally. At least my children, they move really well when they have freedom. It makes them less angry. It makes them easier to deal with whenever, I have a conflict with them, because they have so many options for freedom in so many different areas. So when I do have something to say and I do put my foot down, they know I'm serious on this because I give them freedom elsewhere. Okay, so the concept of that is if you can't share it, you lose it. And so I will tell them, if they can't come to a negotiation and they can't figure it out amongst themselves, then it's mine. I take it away. It's mine. And yes, I even do this with my 3-year-old. Like my 6-year-old and 3-year-old were playing the other day with a toy water gun. And I just took it away. They couldn't figure it out amongst themselves. They're sitting there battling out, and you can't, negotiate with a 3-year-old. So I took it away. You can, judge me for that if you want. But guess what? Nobody even threw a fit. Everybody is so understanding in this house that if we can't get along, then the fun ends here. It's just the way that it is. And then I can give it back later, and maybe they're going to have a little bit more of a interest in negotiating. And maybe Elijah would have allowed Aiden to play with it for 2 minutes until Aiden got bored. He's 3. He's going to get bored in 2.5 seconds. Like, that would have been a great option as Elijah as the bigger brother. That's a really good way for him to learn to lead. So, allowing them to start their negotiations, and like I said, do not underestimate the power of rock, paper, scissors. There are a little bit of tears sometimes when someone loses rock, paper, scissors, but it's the game. It is what it is. I mean, my husband and I rock, paper, scissors over changing diapers, and that's just, it's something that has worked really well in our household. Okay, when they come tattling, first things first, here has been a game changer for me. When they come to tattle to me, so-and-so did so-and-so. Okay. But what did you do? What was your part in this? Because so often I ask, what did you do first? How did this story play out? Because if you can get them to stop and look at what they did, a lot of times they provoked the other one to whatever. And it doesn't mean that I don't get, if they provoked them to hit them because they were frustrated because they weren't listening to what the other was asking or what the other was doing. Or maybe Elijah is notorious for being the one that starts the fight and then cries to me whenever he's done fighting and he got hurt because his brother is bigger than him. And then he comes to me and I have to go, well, what did you do? And he doesn't want to answer that question. And he doesn't want to answer that question because he's just as guilty as Asher was, and probably even more so because normally he's the one that started it. So I think that it's so important, one, that we ask, well, what did you do? What was your part in this? It helps them to understand that they have to take responsibility for their actions and that they have a part in all things. The deeper that you get into self-growth, you're going to recognize, and you're going to hear, especially on this podcast, because it's something that I hear over and over from all of the mentors that I listen to, is in every situation, you have some part of it. Even if the part is just allowing the other person to behave and treat you the way that they are treating you. What you will learn is you teach others how to treat you. You teach others how to, if you feel like you're being treated incorrectly, well, have you shown them that they're allowed to get away with that over and over again? Because of course, whenever they're frustrated, they're going to come take it out on you if you have taught them that you are a punching bag and that you continue to lay down whenever you are being treated as some type of way. So it really helps them to quit tattling as much, especially if they know they're going to have to take ownership of their part. The next part of that, I oftentimes remind them two wrongs don't make a right, and how we're supposed to treat each other. I hung the Fruit of the Spirit poster in the living room, and it is a wonderful cheat sheet for how we are supposed to treat each other. Like, it's great for them to just be able to go up and read, okay, how are you supposed to be treating each other? And they're like, kindness, gentleness, patience, and they're just like sitting there. They've got to go through it and like all have, Asher read it off to Elijah or whatever. But it's right there, and it helps to remind them this is how we are supposed to be acting when we have the Holy Spirit. This is how we are supposed to treat people. All right, so slow down and listen first before you judge. Here we are yet again talking about judgment. Okay, so Asher is forever picking on Aiden. So Asher is 8, Aiden is 3. I don't know what the deal is with them, but Asher is forever picking on Aiden. And I cannot tell you how many times I have jumped to a conclusion about what was happening in the other room. And I'm already overwhelmed. I'm already overstimulated. I'm already frustrated, all of the things. And I hear this whole fight going down in the other room. And I'm so annoyed and so beside myself. And I jump to a conclusion. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, learned from it. And I'm doing better now. So now I want to pass that on to you. So, for example, I hear crying in the other room. I assume that somebody is guilty based on what situation I heard in there, and I react. But sometimes, a lot of times, I'm wrong. And there's been multiple times that Asher was just trying to help Aiden, but Aiden is losing his mind because he didn't do it right. Think of like peeling a banana and you didn't do it right, or cutting the apples and it's not the way that they like it. Like, he's 3. He doesn't always understand you're trying to help him. And there are times that Asher is definitely picking on him. I have seen that. He loves when he gets a rise out of him. He loves to poke the bear a little bit further. Drop the judgment of what you think is happening in the other room and stop and hear them out on what is actually going on instead of jumping to the conclusion that you know what is going on. I think this allows them to understand that they do have a voice in this house. And if I teach them and I show them in our house, you're innocent until proven guilty, it's like they feel safer to talk to me. It feels like they are safer to tell me the truth. And I have definitely seen less hiding, more honesty, and the ability to tell me actually what happened, even if they are at fault, because we have also paired that with lesson 2 above of telling me what your part of it was. So the two of those are kind of going hand in hand, but really what we're doing is we're teaching our kids to open their mouth, say what actually happened, even if they're at fault, and we're giving them the space to tell their side of the story. Because here's the thing. even in my relationship, even with my husband, there are times that I assume his intent, or I assume what he's doing in some way, shape, or form. And when I actually get the time to sit down and have a conversation with him, it's something completely different than what I thought it was to begin with. And I can understand his reasoning as to why. It's crazy how often, if you stop and you connect with your kid's heart instead of going straight into discipline, it is crazy how often their mindset or their thoughts make sense, or they can almost like say something to where it triggers in their brain that they were in the wrong. And so this is like the basic kid version of dropping the judgment. If you haven't or if you haven't listened to episode 11, Why Conversations Turn to Arguments, that's a great episode you should go back and listen to. It's the adult version of Drop the Judgment. This is the kids version of dropping the judgment. You're not judging on what's going on in the other room. You are sitting and having a conversation and allowing them to know that their voice matters. Next, be what you want them to be. If you are modeling fights and you are modeling frustration and you're modeling yelling in front of them, they are going to pick up on it. If you are telling them that they are somebody who causes issues, they are going to rise to the occasion. So make sure that you think about what it is that you are speaking over your children, and make sure you're modeling the behavior that you want for your children. If you're yelling, they're going to be yelling. That's how they're going to act. I know this because my mom yelled, I yelled, and I still sometimes yell. And guess what? My daughter sometimes yells. And sometimes she's just a loud person in general. But like, it happens. And I'm not, guys, I never come to y'all from a place of I've got this figured out and I'm a perfect parent by any means. Everything that I tell you from a space that I've learned it firsthand because I've done it. I do all of this from a space of I learned my lesson and I'm passing it on to you. So never and ever think that I am coming to you from a space of I got this figured out. I've never done this before and I am like the perfect parent over here, because that's not the case. So I do think that modeling really matters, and I hope that you will understand and start catching yourself in those little time periods of like, why do they do what they do? Oh, well, they do that because I do that. Or they do that because my husband and I do that, or they do that because they see that in their husband. And that doesn't mean you get to judge your husband and go be like, well, they do that because of you and blah, blah, blah. You can gently have that conversation without an argument. That's when you drop the judgment. Like I said, if you haven't listened to episode 11, go back and do that. Okay, so if I lose control every time that I'm frustrated, why would I expect them not to? Give yourself permission to not carry it all. You do not have to be the one to control every aspect in your home. You do not have to be the one to hold all of the chips in your home. You are allowed to allow them to become great human beings a little bit at a time. You are teaching them coping skills, you are teaching them coping mechanisms, and you are pouring into your kids what you want to see out of them someday. And the earlier you pour, and there's such great ways to break this down into small things. Like I said, I even do these things with my 3-year-old. When you pour into them, the earlier you start pouring, the easier later on in life is. Let them work it out, ask them what they did, listen before judging, and model the behavior. It won't be perfect overnight, but every time that you step back, you're raising kids who step up. Final scripture is Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's the goal. We're raising peacemakers over here. All right. I hope that is helpful for you. I hope that you will choose one of those options and just start implementing one, even if it's just like calm, cool, and collected, and I come in and I ask questions and I allow them. They're not going to start being honest right away if they have constantly felt like they were in trouble along the way. I say all of that from a child that grew up constantly in trouble, but I wanted something different. I wanted something better for my kids, and so that's where all of this has come from, and from the Abundance of my heart, I hope to speak to each and every one of you. Love y'all bunches. I hope you have the very best day.